First of all, let me ask you a question. Um, what do you get worried about? What do you get worried about? Now, I want some of the, I want to, like, we can all say we get worried about money, we get worried about future, all that kind of stuff. We get worried about the other stuff as well, though, don't we? Like, I'll give you an example for me. Like, when your phone gets down to 7% battery, you know what I'm talking about? And it leaves you with that sense of, ugh, I'm worried. Am I going to get through the day? 7%, I haven't got my charger. So stuff like that. What do you get worried about? What do you get worried about? Be honest. Be honest. Like, obviously Claire's like, I'm worried. I'm now married to this guy. You know? She loves him. Look at her. She absolutely adores him. I'm just teasing. What do we get worried about? Throw it at me. Come on. Be honest. Yes. Family. That's a good word, isn't it? I can share this because I could do with you guys praying. But sadly, on the way when we were on our way back on the plane last week, we got given the news that my brother-in-law had passed away. He'd been struggling with cancer, and he was only diagnosed a few weeks ago. And sadly, he passed away. And it leaves me with a great sense of worry for my family, particularly for my sister. He's been through a really rough time. And family can, sometimes it might not be our pain and grief, might not be things that we're struggling with, but because our family is struggling, that makes us worried too. Brilliant answer. Yeah, anything else? Sorry? Thank you. The state of the world, who just doesn't want to even think about what's going on in Israel and Gaza and all of that stuff at the moment, or Ukraine, or that kind of stuff, or we talk about this a lot. We don't want to go into a downer. We don't want to be focusing down here, but it can be at times. You look at the world and go, "What is going on? I just can't cope with this." There's a lot of stuff to worry about. Yeah, very good. Anything else? What other people think of us? That is a really that is a really good one, and that might link in perfectly with my talk this morning. Thank you, Chris. Uh, you know, what people think of us. Like this is something I've struggled with for a long time. Because as I often quote, I'm just a poor boy from a poor family. That's my kind of tagline for my life, and that's it. And I have lived with this kind of imposter syndrome. Actually, it's something I've lived with most of my life, and I know some other people in the room can relate to that. Just feeling like what do people think of me? I'm not worthy of this. Great answer, Chris. Fantastic. Anything else? Yes. Persecution of? Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. There's lots about the end times and stuff right now, isn't there? What does that mean if we are in the end times? And we could debate on that. I love talking about this stuff. If we're in the end times, what does that mean for our life? I would put a little challenge. I'm going to get a little spin on this as well, because I see a lot of Christians saying, like, we're in the end time, kind of, we need to bunker down. And I'm like, no, I'm not sure that's really, if we are in the end times, I'm not really sure that should be our response. I think our response should be, our mission doesn't change. Our response should be, our calling doesn't change. The lead is still there. If anything, it should fill us with a sense of urgency. Like, let's go. Yeah, great answer. Anything else? Yeah. Sorry? Health, big one, yeah. Worrying about our health, and I haven't had any major health scares myself yet. I've been quite blessed in my life, but I'm at that point in life, and some of you look at me and see a young man, a young strapping man before you right now. But let me tell you, there are times where my knees are creaking and aching, and my urine's changed color. I'm like, oh, is that normal? What's going on here? Or there's some lump or pain or something, and and then you go on Google, and no matter what you Google, you're going to die. So health is definitely a big worry. Anything else? Huh? What's? Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Relationships, full stop, I think would be fair. Our relationships and our friendships, our husbands and wives, and all the rest of it. Very good. Right. Okay, I will come back to why I want to ask that question in a bit. But for now, we're going to think a little bit about birdies. Now, obviously going to New Zealand, basically the rule is in New Zealand, if you're going to care about anything, it has to be about birds. Okay, they love their birds in New Zealand. My in-laws are already what we call twitchers. Is that right? So bird lover twitchers. Sometimes I just call them twits, chers, and they love their birds and stuff. But while we were in New Zealand, we had the privilege of seeing loads of really, really cool birds. They've got these kind of New Zealand pigeons, which are they're like our pigeons, but bigger and better looking. And they've got like more prettier colors. They're fat. They're like literally, you can see them walking on the branches, and the branches are like, they're like shuffling along. Like, to be honest, I'm like, that's a bird after my own heart right there, And you've got these, so you've got these pigeons. You've got these tuis. Have you seen tuis? They kind of they got this like cool like feathery chest thing. It's like really beautiful. We only saw like the back end of one of those, sadly, but they're very famous. Of course, the kiwis, the actual kiwis. This precious little bird that doesn't fly, and it's on the verge of extinction, but it's just a beautiful little thing. And then in fact, this has actually become my favorite bird of all time. This thing here, if it comes up, is called a fantail. And this little bird, right, the reason why it's now my favorite bird of all time is because it's so playful. So this is completely wild, and this little bird, it just loves showing off its little tail. So it comes up to you, it's like just a couple of meters away, and it's like going, hey, look at me. And it's dead, it's really cute. And they won't leave you alone. Huh? You want me to do that again? No, I better not. I don't want to lead you in temptation now, come on. Oh, Lord, forgive us. So this is my daughter's impression of a fantail, as you can see. She's got a couple of leaves and stuck them in a trouser. She's wiggling her bottom, and it's very cute. But they're really, really cute birds. And on all this adventure in New Zealand, okay, God really spoke to me through a bird. And that bird... Let's get focused here today, please. Right. That bird is the common sparrow. Couldn't believe it. There I am in New Zealand seeing all these beautiful birds. And God speaks to me through this thing. And basically what happens is, see that how this bird here is giving you a judgmental look? You see how it's kind of looking at you? It's kind of almost looking down on you a little bit, yeah? Well, that was my experience. We'd gone to this place, and we're eating our lunch, and I've got this massive share bag of crisps, which, of course, I'm sharing. And I'm eating, and this sparrow is next to me, and it's like a cut-off log, which I'll show you a picture of in a minute. And this sparrow is just sitting on this log, and there I am with a crisp, this massive crisp, ready to shove it in my mouth. And he's giving me this look, like, do you really need that, fella? That's really what I felt the bird was saying. Like, do you really need to eat that crisp? Like, wouldn't it be better to share? I don't know why. We see sparrows all the time, right? They're like one of the most, if not the most common bird in the world. Like, you can find them on every continent except for Antarctica. And they're usually around, aren't they? So if we go outside now, there will be sparrows there. They like to hang around houses and people, and so they're we call them almost the common sparrow, don't we? They're always there. And this sparrow is looking at me, and I'm like, fine. And I got my crisp, and I crumpled it up into little bits, and I sprinkled it on this cut-off piece of wood. And all of a sudden, this flock, and you can barely see them here, it really does not give it justice, this flock of sparrows just come out of nowhere. It's like they were hiding, waiting, And as soon as the crisp hit the ground, these sparrows come from, and there probably was 10 or 15, maybe more, of it. And in that picture, you can barely see them, but there's at least 6 sparrows in that picture. 10 points if you can see any of them, but they are there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 in a line at the top, and there's another one that's sitting at the front here, and there's another one right in the corner on the left-hand side, bottom left. He's sitting there. You can't really see them with the whatever, but they're there. And so there's this moment where I'm kind of, and then when I see the sparrows, I'm like, well, that wasn't enough crisp for all of them. So I go and get some more crisp, much to the annoyance of my wife and others, and I'm sprinkling them crisp, and these sparrows are having a real feast, having a feast on me. And I was instantly reminded of some passages in the Bible. And it's been with me now since I had that experience about 3 weeks ago. I've just wanted to share it with you guys. It's like, I really feel like this is what God wants us to know right now and wants us to think about. I think it's true for my life and the journey that Ali and I are on at the moment. I think it's true for us as a church. And in fact, when I was really wrestling about whether I should share this morning, I came down to church and my mother-in-law has shown me this new app, which basically hears bird calls and tells you what they are. And I put it on outside the church to see what was around. And I was just about to press stop, and then last second, Sparrow popped up. I was like, right, okay, I need to share this with you today. So we're going to be thinking today about the sparrow and the raven. And we're going to be focusing really on this kind of an example that Jesus uses on multiple occasions to encourage his disciples. And it's this idea, well, we'll read it to you in a moment, but there are at least 4 places in the New Testament that you can find this story where either Jesus is talking about sparrows, or he's talking about ravens, or he's talking about birds. But the kind of message is all the same. And we're going to quickly read through the Matthew and Luke one about sparrows, really short verses. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Luke's version, very similar. I just like the fact you get a deal in Luke. Because in Matthew, we get 2 sparrows for a penny. In Luke, we get 5 sparrows for 2 pennies. It's like being at a market, isn't it? And not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. And it's a lovely verse. And I want to give you a little bit of context because in these 4 stories that we get about birds or sparrows or ravens, the context is slightly different, but the message is the same. So in some contexts, it's when Jesus is sending out his disciples, and he's sending them out on a bit of a mission, and he's basically encouraging me, saying, "Look, you're gonna go through some hard times. Some things are gonna be difficult. This is what you need to do. Trust in God." He said, "Don't take extra clothes. Don't worry about food. Don't worry about what you drink. Don't even take extra sandals. Just go and do the mission. Your God has got your back." This is basically what he's saying, and he uses this example. In another place where we get in Matthew, for example, we're talking about his kingdom and where we should be investing. So it's talking about generosity, and we covered a little bit about that before I went away, didn't we, when we looked through Matthew? But this idea of invest in his kingdom, and we're going to think a little bit about that in a moment. Don't store up your treasures. Remember, we talked about this before. Don't store it up, because the birds don't do that. So, and God looks after them, etc. So let's just read through one of these. And these stories are very similar. The one that we get in Luke and that we get in Matthew are very similar, other than a slight change at the end, which we'll quickly mention. But here we go. So this is Luke 12, and it's a little bit later on. Then Jesus said to the disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear, for life is more than food, and the body is more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart, and this is important, do not set your heart, so you get the context of it, on what you should eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan world runs after such things, and your Father knows that you need them. And I just want to just stop and focus on that verse for a moment. Our God knows our needs. Our God knows our needs. Needs. But seek a kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. And this is pretty much how we end in Matthew's version of this story as well. It's pretty much the same story, except he doesn't say ravens, he says birds. And then we get at the very end, hit their version, he has this extra verse that most of us will know well. But seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Now, I personally find these stories challenging. They are because it's sometimes very hard to trust God, isn't it? Like, we worry for a reason. We worry about our bills for a reason. Because we're worried about, getting fines or maybe losing our home or whatever. There's a reason why we worry. We worry about our friendships, as someone said earlier, because we care about them. We don't want them to suffer. We don't want them to be in pain. We worry about what's going on in the world because it has an impact on our country and the future of our country. It has an impact on our children and the world that they're growing up in. So we worry for a reason, and therefore, actually trusting in God and giving our worries to Him is not an easy thing to do. And the challenge here is not to say it is easy to trust God. It's saying if you learn to trust God, He will be there for you. And I love the fact that Jesus gives this example before He sends out His disciples. And it's almost like a test run for them, isn't it? So this isn't a circumstance that they find themselves in. This is a circumstance that Jesus commands. So He's not saying, they probably, some of them were some of them were wealthy, some of them were doing all right. And yet Jesus is saying to them, listen, you've got a mission to do. I'm sending you out there, and this is what I want to teach you. You don't need to do this in your own strength. You don't need to take all the things that you need. You don't need to take extra money and plan out your journey and what it's going to be. You just need to trust in God. Follow the path that's before you. Find where you are, and God will provide. And just in the same way as He cares for the sparrows and the ravens and the birds, just in the same way that He cares for these things that we see as invaluable, how much more does God love you? He is not going to let you down. And it's a bit of a test run, isn't it? It's like, and then they go and do it, and it builds their faith. They learn by taking those steps, by living in the way that Jesus asked them to live. They actually learn that they can trust God. They are put in situations where faith brings them through, that they're not doing it in their own strength. And I think it's one of the reasons why they end up being so effective as disciples, because they learn what it is to live in faith. They learn what it is to give God control. Who in here is good at giving God control? Anyone want to put their hands up and say, some of us are like, yeah, I think I've learned. Maybe I have learned that I can give God control. I'd probably put myself in that camp as well. I'm not there yet. I want to be better. I want to be more reliant on God. I want to put more trust in God. But I know that my life, the life that I've lived up to now, where I have given God the little steps, the little movements, the little bits of trust, it's helped me now. I'm in a bit of a stroll. I'm trusting. I'm walking. I'm following His path. I try to. I want to be running. So I'm not there yet, but I try my best. And I think there are three things that I want to just kind of highlight. I really feel like I just need to say to you this morning from these stories. I want you to go away and think about them and pray about them and maybe ask what God wants to say in your life. And the first one is this, and you need to hear this. You are valuable to him. And I really felt like I need to share this because in this story, we get this comparison of sparrows, which once again, let me highlight, common. We see them all the time. We take them for granted. There's nothing seemingly special about them. And in fact, in our story, we see what their value is in our eyes. Because you can get 2 sparrows for a penny. You know, you can get 5 sparrows for 2 pennies. That is not great value, is it? On this precious, beautiful, incredible bit of creation that God has made. And I think often we put a value on ourselves, just like we do with everything else. The value of a sparrows is a couple of pennies. What's the value of me? And what we get in this passage is Jesus reminding his disciples that God values us. That God values us. And though we might feel very common, though we might feel there's nothing special about us, just like I said earlier, poor boy, poor family, God says, I value you. I value you. And we shouldn't listen to the lies that come into our head, the lies that say, God isn't interested in me. It's a lie. Like when we actually look at what God would be prepared to pay for you and for me, that is not a God that is not interested. That is not a God that hasn't got a value on us. And I just think often those lies stop us from living the beautiful life that God has lined up for us. You know, it's like part of our, it's almost like, what can I even do in God's kingdom? Do I even belong in this room right now? Because I'm so down here, I haven't got any part to play. And God's like, no. Like, you're precious to me. You are precious. It's interesting when I think another lie that comes into our head is that God turns his back on us, that he turns away from us. But we know that the story of repentance is not God turning back to us, is it? The story of repentance is us turning back to God. He never turned away. He never turned away. The second thing I want us to really